Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we are continuing our drive and our look at alternative figures for Warhammer The Old World. Now, Games Workshop hasn't produced all of the figures it needs to support all of the core factions it says it's going to support. So if you want to play those factions, we are forced to look elsewhere or to dive onto the secondary market. And for many people, that means 3D printing. And one of the names I've seen over and over again and have actually bought some models of myself, Highland Miniatures. So, Highland Miniatures are a little bit different to your other third-party providers that I've been talking about, in that they sell STLs and then other people sell them models. They're available through My Mini Factory, Etsy, and doubtlessly other places. Now, if you've got a 3D printer, then fantastic, you can use that to your heart's content. If not, then you do need to go through perhaps the variants of another person printing those models. So you're going to have to take a little bit of a gamble on the quality, because it will obviously vary depending on who does your printing, what their setup's like, how experienced they are using that setup, what resin they use, etc, etc. So there are variance points. It's not just purely down to the provider. However, that being said, there are some really cool models available through Highland Miniatures. Let's have a look. So to start off with, I should point out there are 7 collections of models at the moment. My experience of the models comes from the dwarves, so let's start there. Now, the dwarf collection are known as the Sons of Ymir, and there is a staggering amount of choice of STLs. By my count, I think it's something like 35 different kits, or prints I should say, plus a movement tray. And this covers everything from heavy cavalry, which, you know, if you want to ally in some Imperial Knights into your force but keep the same aesthetic, it's definitely an option. Then there's Rangers, there's Handgunners, there's Slayers, Pikemen, Lords being carried by a shield. There is all sorts of stuff for you to have a look at. Now, in my experience, the models generally come in one of 2 sizes. They're either listed as coming in 28mm or 32mm. Now, at the time I bought mine, I bought some of their Seeker models, which Slayers, effectively. I was thinking, because Warhammer is heroic 28, a natural 28mm model looks a little bit small. I thought 32 would be most appropriate. I was wrong. They are a little bit too chunky, and from what I've seen of other people's experiences, they're saying very similar sort of things, and that 28mm is a better fit. I've not seen the 28mm, just the 32, but they don't look completely out of place. They're just chunky. Now, the prints I got, they were good quality. Yes, you could see layer lines, particularly on the axes. I did do a review of them in a previous video, but overall, yeah, they're nice models. They're crisp, they're clean, and if printed well, fit in quite nicely for your Warhammer army. And particularly at the moment, as dwarves, we think they're around the corner. We've seen the dice, but there's no official announcement yet. So at the moment, the only way to get models, as I say, for this range is to buy separately, because Games Workshop are constantly sold out of what limited range of dwarves they sell. What else is there? Well, there's the ancient enemies of the dwarves, the orcs and goblins, and these make up 2 of the available 7 collections, one being dedicated to orcs, the Mordor's orcs, and then there are the swamp goblins. Now, the orcs is a much smaller collection. There's just 9 things for you to print. There's a shaman, a boss or war boss on a boar, a boar chariot, stone thrower, what's effectively black orcs. They look very similar to black orcs. Boar boys with spears, arrow boys, boys with hand weapons and shields, and some kind of boss type creature. So much more limited, but I'm sure they'll be very much of a similar standard to the dwarves. They do look, I have to say, very reminiscent of models produced by Games Workshop, so there's very much that clear influence, and I think that will help if you want to feed them in across with official models in your army. The goblins offer an additional 11 prints along with a modular movement tray. So here you've got a mixture of what looks very much like different types of night goblin and some river troll looking pieces as well. Across these two ranges, you're not going to get everything you would want necessarily for an Orc and Goblin army. There's no wolf riders, for example. Can't see wolf chariots, things like that. But there are night goblins and squigs. They're clearly the night goblins of the swamp goblins here. There are also amongst the collections 2 undead factions available. One, Transylvania. So this is a translation for the vampire counts. This is a pretty exhaustive collection of things for you to get, including not only a movement tray, but also some terrain bits. So you've got your ghouls, skeletons, corpse cart, you've got vampires on zombie dragons, wraiths, you've got cavalry, you've got all sorts, dire wolves, all sorts of things here. So you can probably get most of what you'd like, along with perhaps some unit fillers for a vampire counts force. The other collection of undead being the Eternal Dynasties. Again, this is a very small collection. There's chariots, skeleton cavalry, skeletons with bows, and skeletons with spears, plus some obelisks. So I would imagine there'll probably be more of this sort of stuff coming, but these are, again, very clearly inspired by the Tomb Kings. And that leaves us with 2 human collections. Gallia, the medieval kingdom, and Sunland, the Empire of Sun. No prizes for guessing what these best represent. The Gallia collection has pretty much what you'd expect of them. There's some knights, there's knights on foot, there's Pegasus knights, trebuchets, some peasants. Interesting leading into perhaps some of the more comedy elements as well. So you get the Black Knight from Monty Python. There's a King Arthur sculpt you can get, along with a piece of terrain in the form of a horse stable. So a reasonable range of things here. There's quite a few kits. Clearly, I think enough to make it interesting. And if you do like the female aspect of the new Lords of the Lance book, for example, you can get some female heads as well. Sunland, the Empire of the Sun, works very nicely with the Empire of Man by the looks of the offering. You've got halberdiers, handgunners, cannon, pistoliers, archers, Knights of the White Wolf clearly represented here, wizards, there's steam tanks, Reichsguard on foot, all sorts of stuff. So again, there is a really good array of things, including a war wagon, the Wittenberg wagon as it's called in the kit, for those with long memories and wanting to revisit some of those really old style entries in the Imperial Army list. And there's some really cool looking sculpts. They're really capturing the different feels of the various factions. They do have, as I say, across the board, I think, a really strong connection with the Warhammer equivalent, so I see no reason why they wouldn't fit in nicely across the board. And I know a lot of people have been using them. I've seen a lot of chat around the use of Highland miniatures in order to build armies for Warhammer The Old World. So that concludes our look at a 3D printers offering as alternative figures for Warhammer The Old World in the form Highland miniatures. If you've liked this video and perhaps found it useful to understand more around some of the options out there, do consider looking at the previous videos looking at Mantic Games and North Star. Also, dropping a like and possibly a subscribe to the channel is always really helpful in showing your support. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.